Okay, now it's time for question time. First question.
You've talked about how Israel are now stuck in Gaza. Do you see similar trap for the US, or do they have a path forward and out of this?
Well, the United States is not going into Gaza, right? I mean, we're not putting forces in there, but we are joined at the hip with Israel. We have this special relationship so that as long as Israel is bogged down in Gaza and having all sorts of problems, both in terms of dealing with the Palestinians and dealing with the wider world, it has huge consequences for us. We end up vetoing Security Council resolutions that we don't want to veto. It ends up poisoning our relations with the Egyptians and the Jordanians. So there are all sorts of spin-off consequences for us that are negative. And this is why the Biden administration, to its credit, is deeply committed to trying to figure out how to solve this one. As I said before, we'd like Mahmoud Abbas to come in, take over, then we can get the rich Arab countries to pour money in, we can rebuild Gaza and live happily ever after. That's what we want to do, because this is not in our interest to let this go on. But the problem we face is we can't get the Israelis to go along with us. This is well documented. And the end result is, no end of trouble, certainly for the Israelis, but even for us.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Thanks, John. Lachlan McIntyre. Since Australia's security depends on the United States, do we have no option but to take sides in Gaza and Ukraine?
Meaning Australia.
I'm not sure what taking sides means. If you're talking about Hamas versus Israel, that's very different than talking about the Palestinians versus Israel, right? In other words, I know lots of people who loathe Hamas and hope Israel destroys it, who are very sympathetic to the Palestinians, who believe that Israel is committing genocide, right? So I would argue you can take the side of the Palestinians if you are an Australian, and you can make the argument that that's in Israel's interest, right? People who've argued for a two-state solution have long argued that's in Israel's interest. That's the solution. That's the argument. But if it's a choice between Hamas and Israel, Australia, certainly the government and most people who operate in the foreign policy establishment, they have no choice but to side with Israel against Hamas.
Next question, John Connor.
Yes, your part of your proposition essentially is that there is no support in Israel for a two-state solution. Now, I know that there's an organization membership of which is confined to people who've been the rank of major or above in one of the four Israeli defense and intelligence institutions. That has consistently argued, I've not checked since October, but has consistently argued in favor of a two-state solution while recognizing it's difficult. I really think that is in fact a reflection of at least the views of a significant part of the Israeli intelligence and military establishment prior to October 7. Now, given that, and sufficient pressure from the US and otherwise, and elsewise, may require transfers of population from Gaza and the 500,000 settlers in the West Bank, Israeli settlers. But surely there's some degree you may be pushing on an open door in trying to arrive at that solution.
With all due respect, I don't agree with you on that. I think there are a handful of people in the Israeli establishment who are in favor of a two-state solution, but they're small in number, and the elites who...
Sorry, that organization includes the heads of all of those previous heads of all of those four organizations, various of them.
Still a small number. I believe there's no evidence. Furthermore, the Israelis are not going to agree to a two-state solution after what happened on October 7th. You're going to create a viable Palestinian state that has weapons of its own on your border. You've not defeated Hamas. You've just suffered this devastating defeat on October 7th. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, next question, Tony, and then we'll go to Antoinette.
I'd like to just push on this two-state solution a bit further. And really, as you as a realist, I mean, basically you said that a greater Israel with the West Bank and Gaza in it as a democratic state is off the table. I think everybody can understand that. I think that ethnic cleansing is off the table because it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to allow Israel to do that, and I'm not even sure that Israel wants to do that. So you are driven back to the two-state solution. And I'm sort of intrigued as a realist why you're not embracing that. And can I just push you on, can't the United States really use its influence to create that solution coming out of this?
Look, I hope that I'm wrong and the two-state solution is a viable alternative. The Israelis wake up and smell the coffee, and the Americans do what you described. I've been wrong before, and if there's an issue I'd like to be wrong on moving forward, this is the issue. So in spirit, I'm with you, right? But I don't think, as I said to the gentleman on your right, that there is much enthusiasm for a two-state solution before October 7th inside of Israel, and certainly now. And public opinion is against the two-state solution as well as elite opinion. And furthermore, with regard to the United States putting pressure on Israel, Steve Walt and I wrote this book on the Israel lobby.
Steve Walt from Harvard University.
Yeah, Steve Walt, who teaches at Harvard. He and I wrote the book on the Israel lobby. And there's no way any American government can put significant pressure on Israel.
Well, you say that, but the Reagan administration put pressure on Israel and Prime Minister Begin when they invaded southern Lebanon. This is the New York Times. I think this was just a few days ago. They quoted, this is the quote, "Mr. Reagan used the power of US arms several times to influence Israeli war policy at different points, including warplanes, cluster munitions to be delayed or withheld." And of course, Joe Biden has recently withheld the support of 3,500 bombs to Israel. So much for the Israel lobby.
No. No. I mean, you could point to one or two instances back in the distant past where the United States put some pressure on Israel. And the Reagan administration in 1982 that was a law.
President Bush Sr. With the settlements?
He failed. It went nowhere, right? No president has been able to put Joe Biden is not going to put meaningful pressure on the lobby. Joe Biden, you understand, Joe Biden wants to win the election this coming November. And if Joe Biden gets tough on Israel, you'll see what you'll have Brett Stevens ask here. Ask Brett Stevens. He wrote a big column. As soon as Joe Biden told Israel he was holding up these extra bombs that they really didn't need anyway because they've got so many bombs, as soon as that happened, Brett Stevens had a column. And all sorts of supporters of Israel told Joe Biden in no uncertain terms, you want to remember, you're up for re-election, and we won't forget. And of course, the problem that Biden faces, as you all know, is that Arab Americans and many others are going to punish Biden.
Well, the running joke around Jerusalem is that having been strongly supportive of Netanyahu after October 7, Joe Biden is seriously invested in the two-state solution, Michigan and Pennsylvania.